Welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and joined this week and every week by Judah and Doug. The guys have been in terrific form on the best bet doubles, but our good old friend Variance came to stop that run well and truly. Both beaten very closely. Did at one point think they would both come in, but the guys are back this week refreshed and ready to go for week 15. A little bit different structure to the podcast this week. We're going to skip takeaways. We picked out maybe 6 games that have some sort of playoff implication for one or both teams that are somewhat close games. So we want to cover as many games as possible in the main slate. Then we have our any other bets, long shots, and best bets, and all the timestamps are available in the description wherever you're watching or listening once we're done recording live. And just a reminder, hit that like button, subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening, and do get a recap of the bets at Matchbook Insights. You can search Matchbook Insights or put in insights.matchbook.com. Full recap there from Thursday onwards. So guys, we'll get straight into it, and we'll start. We've 6 games picked out, but we'll start with the Miami Dolphins at the Houston Texans. Dolphins 244 on the money line, Texans 166. The Dolphins are getting a 3-point head start at 191, and the total for this game is 46.5. So yeah, Judah, what's your reading on this? Dolphins obviously got it done in the end last week versus Texans off a bye. Both teams still need a win, or these games are must win. So for you, where are you sort of thinking leading into a bet on this game?
Yeah, not the strongest of leans, but I do think the Dolphins, if I had to choose a side, would be the one. This is a Dolphins offense that since Tua has come back has been top 5 by virtually any metric, and I think a lot of the kind of power rating, I guess, in the number of Houston is on this defense and their ability to kind of slow down some offensive production, and you can even see that in the total here at 46.5. I just would I think this is a Dolphins team that can win against anyone, and especially with how they design their offense with such quick passes, it neutralizes a pass rush, and they're going to be able to take advantage of the kind of matchups on the outside. And what Houston does is they allow a ton of deep attempts, and we haven't seen that from Miami much this year. We've been attacking them in spots where they're going up against kind of single coverage units. I saw that a bit last week. I think that the biggest example was against New England when we had this, but Houston's going to, they force teams to throw deep. They've allowed the highest deep attempt percentage over the last 2 years. This has been true. It's similar stylistically to the offenses that DeMeco Ryans has run and what San Francisco has done for a bunch of years before, and that plays into Miami's strengths. It hasn't come yet, but yes, Houston has great cornerbacks, but if you're going to rely on them to have to win one-on-one deep against Hill and Waddle, I think that's a recipe for success for Miami. And on the other side of the ball, the Miami strength is their pass rush. They're top 10 in most pressure rankings, and especially as the D-line has gotten a lot healthier as the season has gone along, and especially as Chop Robinson's emerged, that kind of plays into CJ Stroud's biggest weakness, which is his sack avoidance and his inability to prevent sacks. So not the strongest of cases. I think Houston can slow down this Miami offense. We've yet to see Stroud kind of return to that form of last season. Would it be all that shocking off a bye for this to happen? No, but I do think the Dolphins are this side I would choose if I had to.
Okay, and Doug, I guess similar for you. So what about those couple of points? Miami being able to have that explosive offense, potentially a good matchup against that Texans defense, and also being able to get a bit more pressure on CJ Stroud, who perhaps gives up sacks a bit too easily.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I've joked about it in the past, but at some point you just got to be careful if the team you can't figure out. Like I've joked every time I bet on the Texans, Stroud plays like Mahomes, and every time I bet against him, or bet on him, it's like, he's like Blake Bortles or something like that. Like it's just one of those things where I can't sort of get the good Stroud. Now, obviously there are other moving parts, but you almost have to throw out some of the games where Nico Collins did play. Sure, and much like we throw out games where Tua didn't play and stuff like that. But ultimately, I want to take points in a game that's a coin flip, and you're getting a full 3 here. And this Houston team's, it's been much different this year, right? Playing with pressure, the hunted versus the hunter, all those sort of sports narrative cliches where you play with expectations. And that's been what's been sort of thrown me off with Houston. They just really haven't had any like dominant great games except for a couple, and then their last handful, you mentioned coming off a bye, but besides that, they've been pretty shaky the last handful of games. So I just think I have to grab the points. I didn't love Miami last week, their performance. I mean, frankly, if Devontae Adams doesn't go out of bounds on that pass, they probably lose by 3. With that being said, there are more ways to win, I think, with the Dolphins, and you're getting 3 points. Texans, like, they are what they are, and the Dolphins sort of are what they are as well. I have to take the +3.
Okay, both guys leaning towards that +3 for Miami Dolphins at 191 on Matchbook currently. And let's move on to our second game we're going to cover, which is the Bills at the Lions. Take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. We got Bills at 226 versus the Detroit Lions, who are Super Bowl favorites. They're 175 here on the money line. The handicap sees Bills get a 2.5 head start, and the total for this game, we're so back, aren't we? 54.5, and that was 54.0 when I did up the banners about 5 minutes ago. So that shows you, Doug, I guess, that, I mean, the Bills-Rams game, I mean, a game like that is hard to sort of try and analyze it, but it was an absolute classic, 80+ points. Lions are probably the best team in football at the moment. It's an intriguing battle, and almost like maybe, a game we might see later on in the season as well.
We might for sure. I think the Bills are pretty solid. I just think it's a tough situation, right? So you had the big win on Sunday night. You're doing Snow Angels, and you got to fly across country to face a Rams offense that had the capabilities of doing what it did with all those guys healthy. And now this is another tough spot in a lot of ways because the Lions are coming off the bye. Now they're still banged up. I mean, like, starting with the Hutchinson injury going a couple months back. But ultimately, I think it's a favorable spot for Detroit. I would have made the line 3. And just because it's the spot, the Buffalo defense isn't great. I mean, Josh Allen's obviously remarkable, but this Lions team, you got to give them a lot of credit. Despite all the injuries and so-called potential flat spots, they just keep on winning, and they've been, obviously back-to-back ATS losses, but for this whole season they've been pretty solid. So I think it's Detroit or pass for me in this one. Dan Campbell, I don't know if this is a accurate or fair narrative, but he's all about Jared Goff, and I wonder around the goal line, things like that, if you have on your play sheet sort of potential success rate or whatever, 3rd and 3s and stuff like that. I wonder if they're going to do play action. I would bet Goff touchdown pass props over things like that. And I want to give a little tip of the cap to Judah for the Sam Darnold, who, what do you have, 5 touchdowns? So you said the Darnold props would be really good last week. And I think Campbell will do things like that because he's playing the long game of injecting confidence in his quarterback. And there's a feel there. And I think he's reading the room, and he wants, I mean, there is a scenario, I guess, where Goff could be MVP. So I wonder if those plays on your call sheet, when you have basically can go either way with a play action or something like that, I wonder if Goff's going to get the call because of that.
And yeah, we've seen Detroit Lions this season not afraid to bring out the trick plays whenever they want, really, just for fun sometimes. So they're a great team to watch. And Judah, same question to you, I guess. Where do you start with the Buffalo Bills in that match last week? Because obviously offensively amazing, defensively a lot of worries. You still are going to lean towards them here despite this game being in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the defensive side of the ball. Like, these things happen. They were playing a very good offense. The Rams were also terrific on late downs. The Bills' offense was as good, if not better, throughout that game. And obviously there were some interesting coaching decisions, which kind of led to the results that we saw. And I think we might be having a different conversation. It's just our natural biases if the results were different, but it very well could have been. All of that is to say, I think the main thing in this game is the injuries on the Detroit side. They had been down basically their entire D-line. Lee McNeil gets hurt in the middle of that game. He's in concussion protocol. It's too early to tell whether or not he'll be able to return. And this is just an entirely different Detroit defense than we've seen throughout the year, and most notably in the run game, where they've been so dominant this season. But when you get down to your second and third string personnel, it just does not have the same outlook. And I think the Bills should be able to run the ball. And with Josh Allen, he is about as matchup agnostic as could be, just by virtue of the way his style of play, where he can create and scramble on his own and mitigate a pass rush. And I also think the Bills are going to be able to get their run offense going. Detroit's been bleeding explosive plays basically since Aiden Hutchinson went down. They've been able to make up with that because they're playing such an aggressive style of defense and generating a lot of turnovers, but that's not exactly a sustainable way to win, and certainly not in game scripts where you're not up by 2 touchdowns and 10 minutes into the game, as Detroit has often been. I think the Bills they're just a house right now, and the Lions are great, and obviously they can keep up. There's a reason that there's a 54.5 point total. I just think that so much of kind of the market value lies in the how the Bills defense has performed. How the Lions defense has performed this season, and it has been great from a results perspective. I just, given the injuries, I don't see that as sustaining itself. So again, another small lean on the Bills, but not the strongest conviction play of the week.
No, we asked you guys to preview the biggest games, but I think listeners are interested in your leans and maybe your bit of mapping on the analyzing the game. So Judah, question marks over that line defense, leans to the Bills. Doug, leaning to the Lions in this spot. Let's move on to the Steelers at the Eagles and take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. You can back the Steelers at above 2-1, 305 on the money line. The Eagles 146 favorites in Philadelphia. The Steelers are getting a 5-point head start at 194. The total for this game is 42.5. Judah, the Eagles we've been talking with them for a few weeks. We've seen them almost under the radar initially, then very much on the radar. Did they take a step backwards last week against the Panthers? I'm guessing they definitely did.
I think this is the same team they've been the whole time. Okay. And I've talked about like an inability to get the passing game going, and like Bryce Young wasn't that good. I mean, like he had a lot of miracle plays, but I shouldn't say that. Bryce Young played a good game, but statistically speaking, it wasn't like the production was great. I think it was a lot of just like Philadelphia's inability to kind of generate much offense, and it's really difficult to win football games when your quarterback's attempting 20 passes. That's just like you're not going to be, unless you're having historically good rushing days. And Barkley's obviously having a great season, and there's a reason that the Eagles are in the spot. But they're very vulnerable when in spots where they need to pass, and the passing game has not been good. And I bring that up because we're like the only quarterbacks worse in terms of their kind of pressure to sack rate right now than Jalen Hurts. So Will Levis and Caleb Williams. And these are two guys who have taken a ton of sacks, obviously, and are not in the same tier of quarterbacks as Jalen Hurts, who's like not attempting any deep passes and taking a ton of sacks. I bring up the sacks because the Eagles tackles, Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, have been incredible this season. They've had a little bit of problems on the interior, and then when both of those guys have dealt with injuries, and the Eagles offense like completely sputtered in those games, and certainly when both of them were out. I think that was the game against the Saints, where they won, but the offense didn't really do much. And they're going up against the Steelers pass rush right now, which is at its full strength, I think, for the first time. And they have like maybe a historically good edge group between TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. All three of those guys are like top 10 in PFF's, edge pass rush rankings. They're awesome. That's like a matchup that Pittsburgh can absolutely win. And I think that the run defense has struggled. Philadelphia can control the game on the ground, but if they find themselves in a situation where they need to get into pure pass protection sets, they've been bad this season, and like that is precisely the strength of the Steelers defense. And I'm not sure that Philadelphia can win that matchup. All of that is relevant in a game where there's a 5-point spread, right? These are not teams that are priced as like a coin flip. So there's a lot that needs to go right for Philly, I think, given the matchup. And I'm not sure that they'll be able to do that. I'll just quickly touch on the other side of the ball. Russell Wilson's like the entirety of his game has been via the deep pass, and George Pickens is out now. He's got a seemingly kind of major hamstring injury. It's not a 50-50 type thing as was initially reported. And I think the Steelers are going to live and die by Russell Wilson's deep ball. And yes, he's had easy matchups, but the deep pass is going to be highly variant, and it's going to lead to a lot of tails here. So can they put up a good game in a really tough matchup? Yes, it might just take one or two Russell Wilson moonballs, and like matchups only matter so much when you're relying on really 2 to 3 plays to generate much of your offense. All that is to say, I think 5 points, a lot of points right now, especially given how the Eagles are playing offense and how I don't think they're going to be able to stop this Pittsburgh pass rush, which over the last 3 weeks is generating quick pressure on 30% of plays. That's an absurd number. You're just not going to be successful if you're allowing that much pressure. And Hurts has not been doing a great job dealing with that pressure. So again, lean towards the Steelers here at 5.
Okay, yeah, and the whole game could come down to a couple of Russell Wilson deep balls, according to Judah. The overall team there, Doug, from Judah was great analysis there, but it was just 5 points. Just seems a bit too much here for the Steelers, and you agree?
Yeah, that's where I am. And Steelers team, I mean, they've won 7 of 8, right? Like they're doing things right. Obviously, a little bit of a gamble when Tomlin made the quarterback change, but as bad as Russell Wilson was for most of last year, he's been pretty solid for this in terms of a fit for this team. And the Eagles team, like that performance was expected, right? Big number, giant flat spot. It's a team that's been ripping off wins and big wins. It just feels like with a low total of 42-ish, it feels like 5's a lot of points for, it's not like a tough travel, obviously, this late in the season. I think Tomlin's always got his guys ready. I think Pittsburgh is still brought up as sort of not a contender. I mean, I've literally heard people, conversations in sports like, are the Steelers a true contender? Like, they have to be technically a contender, just given what they're doing. And it's not like the Chiefs are dominant or anything like that in the AFC. The Ravens have their warts at times, especially defensively. So I just don't know if the power ratings and the market has adjusted. I would have made this number 3, but I guess at 5, you're going to get one-sided action. I just thought it just feels a little too high. And, that sort of fluky outcome at the dog pound on Thursday is the only time the Steelers have kind of laid an egg in the last couple months. So not that the Eagles have done any of that because they've been ripping off wins, but it just feels like too many points, like you said.
Okay, yeah, that's the team from both of you guys. Steelers +5 were taking a strong lean, I would say 194 at the time of recording. Let's move on. Bucs at the Chargers and take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. Moneyline sees Bucs 2.4, Chargers 168 favorites in LA. The point spread sees Bucs getting a 3-point head start and the total is 46. Doug, back to you. Did you learn anything from the Chargers' defeat against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I did. I think I made them a little bit more of a contender than I thought going in. I thought the defense played well. I thought they had the, chops to go into a big game, big environment and deliver. Harbaugh kept his sort of team on track, and the game, as Collinsworth said during the broadcast, they were down 6-0 and said something along the lines as, the game's kind of playing out like Harbaugh wants it. But I thought it was a strong performance from the Chargers. There were some big plays. Obviously, Herbert missed the throw deep that could have been a touchdown. And he does have weird brain cramps. Not like that, but he usually does throw some ridiculous passes, like kind of like fluky lineman interceptions every once in a while. But I was really impressed with the team, especially when they were banged up, right? No McConkey, no Dobbins. I thought it was a strong situation play. I was actually kind of leaning Chiefs in that game just because the number had come down. So, from fact that Chiefs were -7 at LA earlier in the year. I think the Bucs defense is really banged up. I think the fast track will help the offense. And obviously the Bucs, they were down 14-10. The Raiders had the ball around the 10-yard line, and then they throw a stupid pick. Like they're just inept. Obviously, we know that about Vegas, but I think the Chargers will be able to convert. I think we're going to see some points. So I do like the over here. What the Bucs have been doing in a lot of ways is really impressive. Obviously, they've taken over first place in that division, and I do think we'll see some points out there in LA.
Okay, yeah, and for the over 46, you're getting bang on even money there as well, so a bit of value on that. Judah, same sort of question to you with the Chargers. I mean, Jim Harbaugh spoke about a couple of plays, and particularly punting it. I think what was the first drive where they had a chance of going for it. I guess you got to be more aggressive come playoff time if you A, want to get to the playoffs, and B, when you get there to beat one of these big teams.
Yeah, the first 2 possessions, one of them they were in like Cameron Dicker's a really good kicker. It was like a 56-yarder that they passed up to punt. That's I don't think how you're going to beat teams come playoff time. And I do think there's some need for a more aggressive style of play. I think when I think about this game, The Bucs have been, I think, a perennially underrated offense this season. I mean, they dealt with a lot of injuries to basically their best skill position players, and Tristan Wirfs also being out. But this is an offense that has continued to kind of chug along by like any drive level, play level, whatever kind of efficiency metric you want to use that captures both the passing and run games. This has been an offense that's like somewhere between like fourth and eighth best in the NFL. They continue to score. They continue to produce. I think should give a lot of credit to Liam Cohen. And the Chargers defense has been great from a statistical point of view, but in kind of any of their matchups against better offenses, they've struggled. And I don't consider the Chiefs, for what it's worth, at this point in time, to be like one of those great offenses. So I think Tampa is going to be able to move the ball. Can the Chargers move the ball also? Yeah, but this has been an offense that's been kind of mediocre, and they did underperform. This was kind of the worst offensive performance of any team that's played the Chiefs in 7 weeks. And that's not because the Chiefs' opponents have been so great. They got shredded by the Raiders twice, the Broncos, the Panthers. The Chargers offense has not been so good. And what worries me about this matchup is Tampa Bay has been generating a ton of pressure. Their blitz rate has gone way up. And Herbert has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when kept clean. That's why we're on him in a spot against the Falcons, which did not turn out great. But the Tampa team has been generating quick pressure at like the third highest rate in the NFL over the last couple of months, as they've like way increased their blitz rate. And that worries me with Herbert because that's kind of also his Achilles heel, is he's still taking a lot of sacks. And certainly he rolled up his ankle in that game against Sunday night, which certainly affected his mobility. He was not running as much in the second half, and he went through a real stretch for about 5-6 weeks coming back from his previous injury where he was running a lot, and that certainly helped his mobility. And I think that's a massive question mark here. Yeah, I like the Bucs here. This is an offense I think is going to score, and I'm not so sure that LA is going to be able to keep up, especially given the matchup.
Okay, yeah, got us off that Chargers train a bit, and maybe pours cold water on Doug's over 46.0, which he's sticking to 2.0 on Judah. Strongly, and I would say, if not Bucs, plus a long shot coming from one of the guys. I won't spoil it any further. Judah's sitting the next game out, but I do want to get Doug's opinion on the Colts at the Broncos. Again, another massive game. Colts 2.8, Broncos obviously in the same division as the Chargers. I think the same record as well, 153. The point spread sees the Colts get a 3.5 head start. I think that was 4 this morning, and the total is 44.0. So seems to be a lot of people back in the Colts this week, seeing that number go down ever so slightly, Doug, but you're happy to lay the points with the Broncos.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm happy to, but I guess I owe it to them after they gave me the gift cover on Monday Night Football. So every year, and I wrote about this going into that Monday night game, and I'm not sure if I brought it up on this podcast. So every year, this is kind of a, maybe not kind of, it's a flawed way of looking at it, but it is a way to think about it at least. So if you don't have a metrics and a power rating and modeling. So every year there are a couple teams that we know the point spread is supposed to be the great equalizer, but at the end of the year, not every team's not 9-8 or 8-9 against the spread, right? We have outlier performances. So we have teams that are 3 and whatever, maybe like more like 5-12 or 4-13, and then the other way around, 13-4. So there's always a couple teams that really do well against the point spread. Last year the Lions did, but usually it's not a team with necessarily a really good record. It's teams that kind of have a mediocre record or a solid record, and the market just never catches up with them. And the market can be very stubborn, as we know. So right now, going into this weekend with only a few games left, the Broncos are 10-3 against the spread, and that's tied for the best mark in the NFL with, I believe, one other team, and that's the Steelers. So the question is, has the market adjusted, and will there be some regression? That 5.5 point spread on Monday night was the most points the Denver Broncos had laid in a game in 2.5 seasons. So 45 straight games, I believe.
Jesus.
So right now we have a little bit lower of a number, but the question is, are they getting better? Has the number caught up? Blah, blah, blah. I think Bo Nix continues to improve, and I think he's actually improving at a steeper rate than maybe the betting market is adjusting on Denver. And that's a very layman's way to look at it. But I don't think this Colts team is very good at all. I think Anthony Richardson plays well. I think there are at times, and I think there are times where there's signs that he's getting better and better and better. But ultimately, I think they're pretty flawed. Now, Denver obviously got lit up a little bit on that game by Jameis and the Browns. But I also think it's a pretty newbie, like a young team, and it was a big spotlight game. I like that the game is not another Monday night game or whatever. So I think it's a favorable number to lay, all things considered. So I'm going to keep riding the Broncos because I think Knicks and them are getting better. And obviously off a bye, there's a lot to like. I mean, Indy's off a bye, but again, the coaching with Peyton and Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback, he's just getting better, I think, as the season goes on.
Okay, ceiling definitely probably not reached yet maybe this season, so perhaps a bit of value in the -3.5 on the Denver Broncos. Green Bay Packers at Seattle Seahawks. This is a Sunday night football game. Take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back the Packers 1.7 now favorites in Seattle, who are 236. The point spread sees the Seahawks get a 3-point head start, and the total for this is now 45.5, unders 2.0. I think that was around 47 earlier this morning. I think a bit of win now forecast in Seattle. Judah, take it away on this game.
Yeah, been talking about the Seattle defense for a couple of weeks now, and I think that case has only been strengthened really post-bye, which I think is a confluence of a few factors. Number one, this is a team that was decimated by injury on defense early in the season. They got a lot healthier, and two, they are in year one of a new scheme, and certainly one with a strong prior success with Mike McDonald. I mean, we saw this in Baltimore with the first year team kind of getting lit up a bit in the first half, and then as they got more comfortable in the scheme, the Ravens defense was one of the best in the NFL, and I think we're seeing it with the Seahawks. They are at the top of the league in run defense in terms of EPA per play, not far behind in the pass defense as well. They're number one in what I call disruption rate, which are plays with either perfect coverage or pressure that disrupts the play from ever developing. This is a defense that has kind of fully emerged, and they take away explosive plays, which I think is kind of the recipe for success to beat the Packers. Obviously, as we talked about with Russell Wilson, the nature of explosive plays is that, like, it only takes a couple of them to really have an outsized influence, right? If Christian Watson's catching a 70-yard touchdown, that's going to flip the entire game on its head. But if we're building in kind of some projection of how likely that is to happen, I think it's less so against a Seahawks team that designs its defense such that they're going to kind of try and take that away. And the Packers have really relied on their run game. If you kind of look at their drive level success, they've been on drives where they run more than anticipated or run heavy drives. They've been the best offense in the NFL, averaging about like 3.4 points per drive, which is an outrageously good number. But if you're going up against a Seahawks run defense, which has basically stopped all of its opponents over the last bunch of weeks, I think it kind of decreases the likelihood of success. Is that to say the Packers can't do it? No. Do I think it is less likely? Yes. And then on the other side of the ball, this is a Packers defense which has not been good for a bunch of months, and they were generating a ton of turnovers earlier in the season. I mean, Xavier McKinney obviously at the top of the league in interceptions, and I think that's kind of propping up the numbers a bit. Their pass rush has not been particularly great, which is huge for Geno Smith. They're bottom of the league in most pass rush efficiency metrics, and that's really the way to kind of get to him given the state of Seattle's offensive line. I think this is a team that should be able to move the ball. Obviously, the Packers have been one of the best offenses in football themselves, but I think the matchup lends itself to a bit more of the Seahawks than the market is giving credit for. I'd also lean Seahawks here.
Okay, leaning Seahawks +3, 1.88. Doug, over to you. You're expecting both offenses to fire here.
Yeah, Seattle would be the only side I could play in this game. But I feel, and I've heard this on a podcast, it makes sense. Like, I feel like these bigger games, teams are starting to sling it, although that Chiefs Chargers game would beg to differ. But this Seattle offense, certainly for all the reasons Judah mentioned, it can move the ball. And, you know, Metcalf missed a couple games about a month ago. So, again, very casual way of looking at it, but like throw out those games. And it's a favorable matchup for the Seattle offense for all the reasons Judah mentioned. And I do think the Packers want to lean on Love, and he's a very good passer under pressure, buying more time, things along those lines. It just feels like a short number for an over-under. 45.5. I do think these offenses will move and they want to go down swinging, so to speak. It feels like it's a little low of a number when you have I think the Seattle offense will look really good again for the reasons Judah mentioned, and then with Love and those receivers. And the nice thing about the receiving core for the Packers is they have it all. It's all the tools on the tool belt, right? You have the deep, fast guy, you have the medium range, you have the possession guy, all those sort of options, guys out of the backfield as well. There's just a lot to like, and I think they're going to be able to move this ball. And I think the Packers will be, ready to rock. I mean, look, it's back-to-back road games, but the extra rest does help this late in the season. It doesn't feel like truly back-to-back road games.
Okay, over 45.5. Doug liking both offenses here at around even money, and lean for the Seahawks for Judah. All those bets are recapped on insights.matchbook.com. We go one bet in or any other bet section, and it's the Browns getting a 4-point head start, Doug, at the Chiefs, and a bit of money for the Browns here. People are liking them in the spot.
Yeah, we almost had 2 plays. I almost was looking at Atlanta on Monday night just because the Raiders were that bad, and they're just a mess on many fronts, especially at the quarterback position. But ultimately, the Browns made the cut, and it's for obvious reasons. Chiefs got the big win, and they're playing with fire. They've been terrible against the spread, under 500, and for whatever reasons, they just can't finish games the way they start them, right? They were up 16-3 against the Raiders, 13-0 against the Chargers, and it is a tough spot. I think the dog pound will be rocking. Obviously it was an electric atmosphere for that Thursday night game against the rival Steelers, but with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs coming in, I can see the environment getting up for it. And Mahomes and the Chiefs do just enough. And 4 feels, like, would I make the line 3? No, you got to get it above 3 here. But at some point, they're showing us who they are, and we just have to believe them. So let's take the Browns plus the 4.
Okay, Browns plus the 4 against the Chiefs, above even money as well, 2-0-2. Long shots times Judah, over to you. And I guess you made a pretty good case here and not a lot has to go wrong for maybe the Chargers to miss 1 or 2 plays or drives that be touchdown into field goals or field goals into nothing for the Bucs to come out with a 6-point win all of a sudden, despite the fact Chargers are favored in this game.
Yeah, I guess I'll explain more kind of the logic of why I'd rather attack this on the tails. And that is, I think, kind of one of the lower variance spots is the Bucs' ability to score points against the Chargers. They've been pretty consistently good the entirety of the season, and I think the Chargers defense is a bit overrated just by virtue of some easy opponents. And there's nothing really that stands out from a matchup perspective, which suggests that the Chargers should kind of clearly manhandle the Bucs front. And then on the flip side, I think there's a lot of kind of variance in how the Chargers play. That's one by nature of how aggressive Tampa is when they're going to blitz a ton. And I also think the main angle here is that Justin Herbert is a very, very different quarterback when kept clean versus when he's under pressure. And Tampa has done an incredible job generating pressure, especially in recent weeks. The Chargers have basically no run game to speak of. Gus Edwards is not exactly anyone's great idea of a run game, and Tampa Bay's been terrific against the run. So you're really asking Herbert, who now I think is going to be lacking in his mobility. He's definitely dealing with a injury to kind of go up and dominate a defense that can generate a ton of pressure where he struggles. Can it happen? Of course. Do I think there's a lot of kind of mass in a game in which the Chargers struggle to score, but the Bucs can continue in their path of sustaining offensive success? Yes. And that's the tail I want to attack.
Okay, that's lane 5.5. So basically a touchdown in overtime will still be covered at 3.6. Doug, your long shot is Bears plus 3.5 at the Vikings. I ask you a simple question. Were you not watching football on Sunday?
I'm going back to the well, right? That was my long shot last week.
Yeah, I respect it.
Man. Well, I'm going 3.5. I'm not going money line for a team that literally has just been painful losses throughout the season. And to your point, last game, it wasn't a nail biter. I'll give them that. They didn't lose a nail biter. These teams played recently. They went to overtime. Obviously, that was a lucky comeback. The Vikings dominated. But this Minnesota team, it was a big win last week, but they put pressure. If the change in offensive coordinator really will do the trick, and Caleb Williams is more effective getting rid of the ball and all that good stuff, like we should see it in this game. And prior to last week, the Bears are playing some nail biters. It's a division game. I'm expecting a little bit of regression out of Minnesota, but you're right. The Chicago team is a hot mess. Fired their coach, and they were an absolute dumpster fire last week. But I just think it was a buzzsaw situational spot for San Francisco coming off those back-to-back losses. Looked awful going in. And that was obviously a strong performance for the 49ers, or just really that bad of one of Chicago. Let's keep banking on that new coach bump like the Saints got, and not the Jets. But all in all, this is a long shot bet. I couldn't find one that I really liked. And I actually did think of one that lines up with Judah's best bet, and I was just going to lay more points, do something along those lines. But
Okay.
I went with this option instead because I think the Bears can lose a heartbreaker by 3 again.
Okay. No, that'll get us paid at 6-4, 2.55 Bears plus 3.5. Best bet time, Judah. I mean, is this where we want to be for best bet, laying 2.5 on the Panthers? Much improved against the Eagles, and have been improved in fairness over the last few weeks for a team that could potentially have just given up in the season. And obviously you got the Cowboys. To be fair to them, should have beaten the Bengals just based on that last punt fumble back to the Bengals. I'm trying my best here to put a bit of interest into this game. Take it away. Why you're laying 3?
Yeah, like Carolina minus 2.5. This is a defense which has been pretty solid for the last month plus of the season. Have also kind of made some personnel changes as well. And the Cowboys offense is they're going to get rid of the ball extremely quick. Kind like that is Cooper Rush's MO, is he's going to get rid of the ball in 2.2 seconds. And he's not throwing downfield, and that's going to kind of limit your ability to have success. But what this relies on, I think, is just a Cowboys defense, which has been at the bottom of the league in pass defense, run defense, however you want to put it. Since Micah Parsons has come back, the results have improved a bit, and they've been generating a lot of pressure. But if you're able to evade that, which has been Bryce Young's kind of main skill, I guess, for his turnaround, is he's not taking sacks, and he's been great when scrambling. He's scrambling at one of the highest rates in the NFL and having a lot of success there. You can kind of mitigate that. And this is a Dallas offense, which they got the ground game going, sure, against Cincinnati. I don't think this is a spot where they're going to have the same success. Like, lost in the conversation about the Eagles, because it's kind of from a perspective of like, oh, the Eagles have kind of struggled a bit to pass the ball, is that the Carolina defense did a great job slowing them down. And that's been the case for a bunch of Carolina's previous opponents. And it's not exactly been the easiest of schedules, which is why I'm willing to buy a little bit more into their recent performance. But what this comes down to is I think that Bryce Young's a completely different quarterback, and he's playing at kind of a league average, if not above average rate. This is a great matchup. I think there's a lot of kind of residual of what the Panthers looked like early in the season, but that's not the same team. And I think we've kind of seen a lot of the ceiling outcome games from the Cowboys in about as good defensive matchups as you could possibly have against teams like the Bengals and the Giants and Washington. And I think the Panthers, as crazy as it sounds, from what they've produced over the last month to 6 weeks, present a very different matchup. I'm comfortable laying the 2.5 with the Panthers, which is not a sentence I ever anticipated saying in 2024.
You have me most of the way there, to be fair. I'll have a think about it before Sunday. But Panthers minus 2.5, and well argued there by Judah. And Doug, another one I'll have to be convinced to get on board here. The Bengals at the Titans under 47, 192 is your best bet on the card.
As I hinted on, I was thinking of the Panthers as an alt line for my long shot play. But this one, man, look, we talk about live and die by Jameis, but you also live and die by Will Levis. He's just an awful quarterback. There's really no other way to put it. That miss on 4th down, but I also blame the Titans play calling. Up 3-0, 1st and goal on the 4, get 2 yards with a run, 2nd and goal from the 2, and they just call 3 straight passes with a bad quarterback. Now, they're probably playing the long game, trying to figure out what they have with Levis, all that stuff. And I just think it lends itself to the under. The Bengals defense is nothing to write home about, but a lot of those, it's horrible. Don't get me wrong, but it's really horrible against good offenses, and the Titans do not have one. They faced a lot of good offenses prior to this Dallas Monday night game that actually somehow landed under. You're facing the Steelers, the Chargers, Ravens. They easily held the Raiders in check, and then the Eagles. So they've given up a lot of points, but they've also had some lower scoring games with the Giants, the Browns. So I think we're going to see one of those. And this Titans defense is pretty good at times. I think statistics, I think are a little misleading here. They got torched by the Commanders, but it was really just that bad first quarter, where I think the Commanders are coming off 3 straight losses, at least 2 straight losses. So I think this number's too big. We're seeing the market come down to 46.5 pretty much at most shops here in the States. I do think this over-under is too high, so I will take an under for my best bet.
Okay, yeah, mixing it up. I like it. 192 under 47.0 at time recording on matchbook.com. So check that out. And Panthers -2.5. For Judah, we're done. I think we've got about 3 weeks left to go in the NFL season. It's really clicking into gear. I know, Judah, enjoy it as much as you can. We are so grateful for football as always. And of course, then in the new year, we will be getting playoff football, which is even better. Insights.matchbook.com. Get a full recap of all the guys' picks, and make sure you hit that like button, subscribe or follow to the show so you never miss an episode in NFL, football, horse racing, or any of our other sports. We will chat to you this time next week. Enjoy the NFL Sunday. Bye-bye.